Once a year, the Galactic Federation holds a conference to discuss the realm of Earth. I've maybe talked about this conference before. It happens once a year, although it's happening outside of where time exists. So I don't know how everyone else is getting there. I don't know how. I've gotten there a couple times on accident, but I really don't know how everyone else keeps track of that once a year thing, because years are not real. But it was last week and I missed it, which is, who cares? Anyway, these are the notes from the conference that I printed out from an email, which does, kind of lend itself to my argument that this could have just been an email. We've got some good news for some of you. We've got some bad news for others of you. I guess the biggest piece of news here is that humanity has avoided the most catastrophic timeline. So congratulations. You're probably not going to go back to it. You have been edging with the most catastrophic timeline for about 4.5 years. And I mean heavy edging. I mean making out with, getting real close with the most catastrophic timeline. We didn't know if you were going to make it. We really didn't know if you were going to pull it off, but you have pulled it off through a series of timeline jumps over the course of the last 9 months. Some of you are privy to those timeline jumps. Some of you are not. Things have gotten strange. You may walk out of your house one day and your car is a different color than you remember. Lots of celebrities dying for what feels like the 4th time. A lot of names on things changing. That's the timeline jumps. I guess the bad news is for those of you who love the catastrophe, for those of you who love to talk about it, complain about it, a lot of you have built platforms around what the next catastrophe is going to be. You guys are going to have to find a new way to be interesting. You're going to have to build a different platform. I mean, you can keep doing it. I don't know how many times you're going to predict the bank collapsing. If you predict the banks collapsing every 3 months, you're eventually going to be right because it is going to collapse. But humanity is not going down with the ship. So humanity is going to be less and less interested in these stories. You might want to find a different thing, a different vibe, a different aura. Welcome to season 4. I do want to just add to what I was saying. I'm not saying that everything is going to be rainbows and unicorn butt plugs from here on out. There will still be difficulty. There will still be discord. There will still be conflict, and things will collapse. The set is being torn down from the old game. And that is because everything that humanity could learn from that way of being a human, it is learned already. So that is going away. But when you have a species like humanity playing in the same game for thousands and thousands of years, you risk, when you start to take apart the set, you risk losing the species, because the species has grown to believe that the set is the species. It's the same thing when a human doesn't ever realize their spiritual origin in their lifetime. You know, you got Jim Bob over here, and Jim Bob is a farmer, and he doesn't think about where he came from or where he's going after. He doesn't he's just Jim Bob. He wears these overalls. He works on this tractor, and that's what he does. That's his identity. If you ask him, what are you? He doesn't say, I'm a tiny spark from a giant imagination experiencing myself for infinity. He says, I'm Jim Bob. I got a tractor. You know, he's got a piece of hay sticking out of his mouth, and that's it. And that's who he is. Then when Jim Bob's physical body dies, he might get confused. This is how you get ghosts on your realm. You have so many souls inside of a human body that are never taught to look at the soul, to look at the spirit, to understand all these different parts of them exist. And they think they are the physical body. So when the physical body dies, they have no fucking idea what's happening. And now you're haunting a house. Now this house has been sold 10 times in the last 30 years because you got Jim Bob fucking haunting it. He doesn't know he's haunting it. He thinks he's Jim Bob. That's all he ever knew. That's who he was. He was that physical body. Or you get people, they know the physical body's gone and they're just grieving. Now they're lurking around a cemetery forever because they're like, I'm buried. Why am I buried in there? It's like, well, you're not that. You're this infinite thing. But now you're stuck because you thought you were a physical body. It's the same thing when you have humans in one way of being for a really long time. They think the thing is them. It's the saying you have on Earth, it's easier to imagine the end of the world than the end of capitalism. That's just a made-up game you've been playing for a pretty short amount of time, but you're all so conditioned into it that as those structures start to fall away, you run the risk of dying with it. You run the risk of collectively calling dominoes and ordering a meteor because you think it's over. It's not over. It's just the game is over. You are not the game. You are not the constructs. So the timeline jumps that you've taken in the last year are about separating the human consciousness from the constructs. And there are a lot of constructs, and a lot of you are divided over what constructs are good or what constructs are bad. This is what a person looks like. This is what a family looks like. This is the point of life. These are morals, whatever. None of that is what you are. And all of it is changing. Every single aspect of the human experience is changing in ways that you can't fathom yet. And we didn't know if you were going to be able to handle that enough to move into the new thing. All right. So, shit will still continue to fall apart. You can sync up with that as much as you want to sync up with that. You know, the human collective perspective on everything is shifting. And so if you find yourself saying stuff like nobody wants to work anymore, that is correct. Nobody wants to eke away their existence at a job that doesn't bring them any fulfillment. That is correct. That will only cause a catastrophe if you insist on things to continue in a certain way. But all this shit is made up. You can just make something else up. I feel like I've been saying that for years, but that'll become more and more obvious to you. There have been a lot of upgrades, specifically in the last 6 months since however long it's been, since the eclipse in April. You've had massive upgrades. And because you've had massive upgrades, we need to go over a couple new vocabulary words. And we need to discuss some things that are happening. The new vocabulary words are words we've used in the past to describe multiple things, and we're now going to use them to describe only one thing. The first thing is the 3D. 3D just means material plane, just means physical realm, just means you can see it, touch it, and taste it. 3D has been interchangeably used with matrix, which is the program. The matrix is the augmented reality glasses superimposing a program over top of the third dimension. So the third dimension is just physical realm. And then the program that you have running is holographically projecting a story on top of it. The matrix is a collective program running through a grid on the planet. You are connected to it in as much as you carry that programming inside of you. It is possible to interact with the matrix without being controlled by the matrix. You do not need to try to escape the matrix. You do not need to try to escape anything because you are here to experience. The escapism brings you suffering. Pain is part of it, but the suffering is coming from the escapism. I'm getting lost in the sauce here. Anyway, there's going to be a lot of material downloads coming in for a lot of you. You may already be experiencing it. You have lived in a material supremacy, meaning that the material plane was seen as the supreme plane for thousands of years, but primarily the last 400 years is what we're going to focus on. You have been living in scientific materialism based on Newtonian physics, whatever. And everyone has been obsessed with the things that can be physically quantified. And now science has become a religion, and everyone has been very disconnected from the other points of awareness. The point of this isn't to reject the material plane. The point of this is to understand that the majority of your consciousness is moving into other points of awareness. So you are becoming aware of your nervous system, aware of your physical body, aware of the ether, aware of the astral, aware of your emotional experience, aware of the connection between all of humanity, aware of nature. And that physical, quantifiable material plane has become so machine-like and mechanical with the absence of all of these other points of awareness, that is becoming very loud. Everyone is becoming very aware of that. The matrix, we discussed at the beginning of this podcast a few years ago, is just a program. That program is algorithmic. When you look with confirmation bias at a experience, when you look at a person, you load your version of them, which reflects your programming. Then there is a general background thing. There is a general program that changes every once in a while to give the soul a new type of experience. So the constructs of that game are shifting, which I'm sure I've talked about somewhere. If the last 400 years was scientific materialism, the next 400 years would be material spirituality. And not this weird LARPing spirituality that's like so over the top and feigned. Not that. We don't need spirituality will become the norm. Everything will become infused with the awareness that you are a spiritual being. You don't need a flowing skirt for people to know that. You don't need to change your name to like Sunbeam, Moonflower. You don't need to talk in a softer voice or avoid all reality that isn't positive at all times. None of this is what spirituality is. You are a spirit. You are a spirit who has been identifying with your body and your, who are you? I have this job. Who are you? I'm this person's wife. Who are you? I am this person's son. It's like, no, you are a spirit here experiencing. You don't have to make it so fucking weird. The log line for the last 400 years was sacrifice the individual to create infrastructure. The log line for the next 400 years is individuals innovating. Individuals stepping into that creative inspiration that is going to propel the human consciousness forward beyond anything you can even imagine. Everything you've always dreamed of seeing, telekinesis, levitation, all of these things, humans are capable of. Humans used to be able to do before they forgot. But none of these things are accomplished through obsession with the material plane, so humans are moving their consciousness into these other points of awareness. It will start to get very loud for you who the hardcore materialists are and who has started to move their consciousness. Although none of this is hierarchical, that is a weirdo construct of the games you've been playing while you were asleep. Nobody is better than anyone else. Everyone's simply just playing whatever game they think is fun. The split has reached the point. Maybe you've heard of the split. People talk about the split. It's something that the New Age movement likes to talk about, but it's a general thing in the air, in the ether, that there was some sort of splitting of the humans that was going to happen. That actually took place in 2020. It's not the good guys from the bad guys. It's not the awake from the asleep or any of this other corny hierarchical shit you guys like to make up. It is just simply humanity was playing a collective game, a consensus game. Everyone was in the same game. And now it will be playing individual games. Imagine everyone playing on a giant iceberg. No pun intended. Everyone's on a giant iceberg, and in 2020, something cracked that iceberg, and it cracked in a million different directions, and the split is everyone slowly floating away from each other. And some people are naturally floating in the same direction, and those people will find community with each other and they will build things together. But there were people that you once interacted with on that iceberg that now when you look at pictures of them, they feel like a movie you once watched. And in the giant iceberg reality, everyone was playing the game from different perspectives. Some people were benefiting from the game. Some people were being harmed by the game. A lot of people were having to pretend to be something other than they were in order to assimilate to the game. And that game is over. Humans are now drifting into their own individual games where the human consciousness will expand at an unprecedented rate. And it's very exciting. But a lot of this will bring feelings of grief or disconnection. You may feel disconnected from people you were once very close to. You may feel disconnected from old versions of yourself. A lot of things are changing very fast. These messages are for people who are already experiencing these changes. This is not a contest. This is not to say if you're not experiencing these changes, you're not also waking up or whatever. These are all just weird ideas you got in your head from capitalism or religion, probably telling you like you're not good enough or you're not doing it right or you're supposed to be like everyone else. You're supposed to be how the fuck you are. That's it. How you are in this moment, you are a moment in time, and that's what you're supposed to be. And it's a giant, stupid waste of time to compare yourself to other beings. So don't do that. That's not what this is for. This is for the beings who are currently experiencing this. This is to make them feel better about what they're experiencing, not for you who's not experiencing it to make yourself feel weird. So don't do that. Okay. Your relation to the outside world is changing. Your relation to the 3D is changing, not the matrix, the 3D, the physical reality. Okay. You might feel different in your body. You might feel different when you're out in the world. You may find yourself becoming overstimulated. No matter how much you get to know your nervous system, you still can't handle crowds. You can't handle lights. You can't handle smells. You're becoming very sensitive to a lot of things. Your relationship to socializing with one another, this one's going to sting a little bit. The belief that humans are social creatures is a construct. No one's ready for that. I understand that no one's ready for that, but hear me out. The belief that you need humans and socializing in the way that you have done it is a construct of a video game that is ending. That does not mean you will be alone. That does not mean you will not be in community. That does not mean that you will not have a social life or a partner or friends or whatever. But you do not need it where you are going the way you needed it in the past. The reality that you were moving into is an internal reality. And if that hasn't already shown up for you, that's fine. You may operate different, and that's also fine. But the vast majority of you are experiencing increasing levels of introversion. You are experiencing overwhelm in social situations and in crowds. You are finding yourself being drawn to different types of social interactions, most of which are probably one-on-one or very small groups, and they're very deep, intimate conversations. And if you can't get that, you get drained very fast. And no matter what, you still don't have very much of a social battery. You are going in to yourself and discovering all of those other points of awareness, which is very necessary for the human evolution to continue forward. Humanity can't expand to the things it needs to expand to when it's obsessed with its mirrors. And that's where you've been. You've only learned about yourself through obsessing with the externalized reality. And a lot of times you don't learn about yourself when obsessing with the externalized reality because it's outside of you and you experience yourself as separate. The desire to worship celebrities is an externalized expression of reality, and that is falling away very fast. The desire to seek a mommy and daddy boss outside of you in government or authority figures or systems is dying very fast, and you're finding that authority within yourself. The desire to be chosen by a partner or a friend group or a boss is going away very fast, and you're finding that you can choose yourself based on the things that are important to you. You're learning that other people's preferences are about them. They're not about you. This is personal empowerment. And as you take your power back from these externalized projections and find these things inside of yourself, you are unlocking abilities in the human potential that you can't even imagine yet. You can't, shit you've fantasized about. But they all exist inside of you, and so you're going inward. So you're showing up different socially. Many of you are learning that the social battery is finite, and if you don't respect the social battery, you will get sick or you will be exhausted. This isn't for everybody, but a lot of you are finding this. The sensitivities are very fun. The more you expand and reach higher frequencies. We hate to say higher frequencies because the New Age movement has turned this into some sort of weird hierarchical thing, but they're just simply higher pitched frequencies, for lack of a better way to put it. As you start to broadcast higher frequencies and tap into the timelines available in the higher frequencies, the foods that you are able to eat the list will get smaller, especially if you live in the United States. Sounds are going to feel different to you than they used to feel. That's because you're becoming very sensitive to frequencies. Many of you are getting abilities that like animals have. So you're hearing sounds you didn't used to hear. You're being harassed by the sound of the electricity in your house. You can hear the fridge. Some of you, this has been happening for a long time. Smells. Smells are now going to communicate a lot more to you than they used to. This is heightened sensitivity. Textures are going to start to bother you. Certain types of chemicals in clothes may start to bother you. None of this is for everybody. This is for some of you. Pretense, bullshit, beating around the bush, people pleasing, other people pleasing, other people saying what they don't mean. The stuff is going to get very loud and frustrating for you. You might find it difficult to watch scripted television or movies the way you used to, because now you're hearing the writers' insecurities. You're hearing the areas in which the network got involved and pencil fucked the script. You're hearing the insecurities and the ego of the actor who's playing the role. The ether is getting very loud, especially if you haven't reached the point yet where you know where the volume button is. The ether is where we are all actually communicating. The ether is where telepathy happens. And the less you pretend, and the less you mask, and the more you go inward, and the more you get to know yourself, and the less you're out there moving and shaking all the time, trying to be something, trying to be a part of something, the more you can hear the ether. And the more you can hear the ether, the less you need to talk, the less you need to do. Music is changing for a lot of you. Music is frequency, and some frequency's been used to keep the human consciousness in a certain point for a while, for a little bit, for a hot minute. And a lot of you are waking up to that. There's also mythologies in the songs. And certain mythologies exist on certain frequencies. These are stories you tell yourselves, but these stories happen on a loop. So if you're very drawn to music about glorifying codependency or saying fuck you to someone you broke up with, don't be surprised when that mythology keeps showing up in your life. That's the frequency that you're hanging out on. That's the story that you're listening to in a very vulnerable state, because you're also listening to frequencies and it's triggering emotions for you. You're manifesting when you're singing that breakup song at the top of your lungs. That's probably another unpopular take, but feel free to turn the podcast off. This is also a frequency. You want to be on this frequency? I don't know. I wouldn't be. There are a lot of things that you may find you're not able to do anymore. And that is because you are moving into a completely different way of being. So thank that version of yourself for its service and let it go. Grieve it, cry about it. It's very important to feel your feelings about the shift because they are complicated. They are complicated. The consensus reality into an individual reality is going to feel very lonely for some people for a period of time. The introversion can feel scary, especially for people who weren't already kind of on that frequency. What it means for the future is difficult to process because you haven't seen the new thing yet. All you're feeling is the death of the old thing, but you've not yet seen the new thing be created yet. So your feelings are valid. If this is a little mushier than I like to get, but this part's a big deal. Power structures are powering down. Just let them go, guys. Let them go. If it's been around for 250 years, let it go. It can go now. You don't need it. Just because it's been around your entire life doesn't mean it is a part of the human experience. You don't have to keep giving your power to something that is pretty blatantly not deserving of holding your agency. My God. I messed these papers up. All right, just a couple more things. Speaking of the external reality, we talked before about ordering shrimp cocktail. Talking about shrimp cocktail every time the server comes to the table is going to get you more shrimp cocktail. Looking at unicorn butt plugs every time you get on the internet is the algorithm's going to bring you unicorn butt plugs. If all you're looking for is proof that humanity is not progressing, that's what you're going to see, because whatever you point your consciousness at loads in the matrix for you. Everything exists right now. Every potential perspective of the human experience exists right now. You're syncing up with what you're looking for. If you're looking at the most unevolved NPCs who've done zero progressing in the last 10, 20 years and using that as proof that everything's terrible and nothing good is happening, that's a decision that you're making to sync up with one pocket. The reality is the humans have progressed. The human consciousness has progressed at warp speed in the last 10 years, at absolute batshit warp speed. And you're robbing yourself of a really fun ride if you're just focused on what's wrong. And also, that's all you're going to see. That's all that's going to load for you. If you don't believe that it's progressing, go watch a movie from 15 years ago. Go read your own Facebook posts from 10 years ago. Go read your journal from 5 years ago. Go look at pictures of yourself from 2 years ago and remember where you were and what you were thinking about. Humanity is progressing. A bunch of the Matrix people that you're looking at aren't even real. They're just holograms of the Matrix. Look at yourself. Look at the people around you. Look at all the things you've learned. You're doing a great job, but some of you are a little bit of a bummer about it, to be honest. A little bit of a buzzkill. You ever known someone that only focuses on the bad parts? They suck to hang out with. You're a drag in the ether. I'm telling you that because nobody else will. The physical reality is a reflection of the human consciousness. The human consciousness has a lot of things to work out before it levels up or as it levels up. So you will continue to see fighting. You will see things fall apart. The earth is working out a lot of detoxing and moving things around. So there will continue to be earth changes and things like that. But ultimately, this is an expansion into something really fucking cool. You're probably going to like it, but also don't take that as some sort of weird rapture mythology. You're here in this moment, having this experience. Needing everything to be positive all the time is just going to make you suffer. But it's really not as bad as you think it is. Anyway, that's it. That's your progress report. Doing a pretty fucking good job. My avatar, Jessa Reed, has a new podcast called Projector and the Flail with Mark Pontius. And I think this one's going to stick. It's like 3 episodes in, I guess, that are currently out, available on all podcast platforms. It is currently an audio podcast. It will be a video podcast here in the next couple of episodes. I just have to learn an entirely new skill set because I will be editing the podcast. I like it, and I think we're going to keep doing it. It feels good. I'm putting a lot of attention into it and feeling good about it. We talk about human design. We talk about, which is something I'm really into. We talk about, we just talked about time travelers. The human consciousness shift is my favorite thing to talk about. So that's mostly what it's about. And Mark feels the same way. So anyway, there's that. If you want it, as always, who knows? This might be the last episode. We never know. I come back when I feel like it. You go to jessereed.com and figure out what the fuck I'm doing. I sometimes do personal sessions, not nearly as much as I used to. I have a Patreon. You can join it for free and just get like updates, whatever I'm thinking about. For $5, you can get some podcasts. For $10, you can get some energy updates. For $20, you can get some, classes or something. I don't know what the fuck I'm doing anymore.
Turn under the hat for sure.